Use it.
Thank you.
Up here?
Well, good evening. Welcome to the August 9th, 2022 Ames City Council meeting. For those of you who are expecting and maybe hoping for Mayor Hala, I am not Mayor Hala. Sorry to disappoint you. You're getting the B team tonight. Mayor Hala is enjoying some long overdue vacation time with his family, and so I am serving as Mayor Pro Tem right now, and so you'll have to endure the B team tonight, but I look forward to this meeting. It's a beautiful day in Ames. The configuration is a little bit different tonight. Councilperson Betcher is participating by Zoom, and can we see her? The owl.
Voice.
So it's just voice. So it's like she's a spirit sort of floating from the dais. All right. And we're anticipating Councilperson Coyeri arriving in a bit. So we will begin, thank you, with the consent agenda. And Council, I need to pull item number 14 because of a conflict. Are there any other items that need to be pulled from the consent agenda? So I entertain a motion to approve consent agenda less item 14.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Barton,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
And move on now to item 14 on the consent. Entertain a motion on passage of item 14.
So moved. Second.
Roll call.
Rollins,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Barton.
Abstain, conflict of interest. So that's the consent agenda. We move on now to public forum. This is the time set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. Please understand the council will not take any action on your comments at this meeting due to requirements of the open meetings law, but may do so at a future meeting. The mayor and council welcome comments from public. However, at no time is it appropriate to use profane, obscene, or slanderous language. We wouldn't do that. We're Ames. And the mayor may limit each speaker to 3 minutes. So if you could keep your comments to 3 minutes, that would be great. So do we have anyone to speak at public forum tonight? Richard, please give your name and address as well.
Richard Joe, 505 8th Street, apartment number 2.
Sure to speak right into the microphone so that Gloria can hear you.
Oh. I went to the Ames police thing that was like last Wednesday, and there wasn't a public forum for it. And it's like I'm kind of curious as to what the rationale for that was. I also wanted to say happy birthday to Mayor Hala. It's his birthday, I believe, tomorrow.
Well, that's very nice of you, Richard.
Yes, thank you.
And it's like I'm very upset with the no trespassing order I wanted to be at the senior variety show at the city auditorium in a week, and they wanted me to do one line in their thing. And that no trespassing order says I can't even be in the audience. And I know that no trespassing thing ends in September, but it's like there's a number of times when I've wanted to be, the city council does things that, I don't know. It's like I ought to sue you guys, or the city. I don't know.
Thank you, Richard. Any other people like to speak during public forum?
Grant Olson, 3812 Ontario Street. 1 week from today, the council will gather to begin the creation of a bicycle and pedestrian master plan. Just as important as what the plan will include is why we are putting the plan together. This planning strives to create an environment that is, well, reason number one, more child-friendly. There are many Ames residents who are too young to have a driver's license. Paths dedicated to active transportation gives adults a space to teach children navigation and mobility skills that foster independence. Number two, people often mention when they select a place, they want to live in a quiet neighborhood. Every trip in Ames that happens either biking or walking generates less noise than if that trip had been taken in a car. Number three, increasing the diversity of our transportation network will make Ames a more resilient city. The gasoline shortage in the 1970s and more recently, gas price spikes are lessons that teach us to make the ways we use to get around less reliant on fossil fuels. Let's say the battery on your electric car depletes. You probably won't be going anywhere. If the battery on your electric bike depletes, you just keep moving along with a little bit more leg effort, of course. While there are many more reasons, the final reason I will mention tonight is something that can be more difficult to measure: health, and related to that, joy. People who participate in active transportation are typically happier and healthier. A city does not naturally occur. A city is the result of design choices. A wise person once said, the best way to predict the future is to design it.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak during public forum? Okay, so should we continue going without Amber on item number 25?
25?
You mean 32?
I'm sorry, 32.
32.
32.
Yes.
All right. So we'll move on now to item 32, the Fitch Family Indoor Aquatic Center. And the way we're going to do this tonight is we'll hear a brief presentation from Keith Abraham giving an overview of where we are in the project. And then I'm curious, how many of you here tonight are wanting to speak for the first time on this agenda item? Show of hands. Okay. And then for the first time. Okay. And how many of you here, if you had a chance to speak for a second time, have something different to say? So we have a few people. So given the fact that we don't have that many people here tonight to speak, let's go ahead and have people speak for a second time. Again, if you're just repeating what we heard last time, there's really not a lot of benefit to that, but that's certainly your prerogative to do that. So there will not be a decision reached tonight by council. Tonight, this is an opportunity for us to listen. And so we're here to listen to you. We will pick up this item again on August 23rd, and that's when the council will be deliberating. So we will not be accepting public input on the meeting of the 23rd. So this is your last opportunity to give public comments, but you're always welcome to email. And I'm very pleased we've received lots of emails. This is what we want. And so the conversation doesn't have to end tonight. Feel free to send emails up through the meeting of the 23rd. Council, even though we're not going to be deliberating, feel the freedom after people have had a chance to present their comments. If there are follow-up questions, so we're not going to be deliberating, but there may be issues or topics that come up from these presentations that you would like to ask staff. So we won't be deliberating, but I want you to feel the freedom to ask staff and not have to wait for that meeting. So with that said, let's begin, Keith, with your comments.
All right. Good evening, council. And just in the council packet that everybody received, there was just a summary in regards to the meeting that staff had with the DOT and the DNR regarding potential funding sources for mitigation. Assistant City Manager Brian Phillips and I attended that, along with several DOT representatives and DNR representatives. So what they did is the DNR kind of highlighted three avenues where the city could obtain some funding. One was the Iowa DNR Brownfield Program. And with that funding's up to $25,000. It's from the DNR to complete activities such as a phase 1, phase 2, and some other environmental related activities. One thing with that is any activity that's already been done doesn't qualify. So it just would be anything such as asbestos abatement, which we do have some of that in one of the buildings on the DOT site, would qualify for that. The second one is the federal brownfield program that's administered by the federal or the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. And they do this once per year, and that's for an assessment and cleanup, and awards could be anywhere from $500,000 to $5 million. You would need to be enrolled in the Iowa Land Recycling Program. That's through the Iowa DNR, and the Iowa Land Recycling Program, does require that you clean up to a residential standard for the contamination. Now, with this, there are kind of three things with the EPA application. They're typically due in December of each year, awards announced in May, and then entry into the program in November. The one thing with this, the city would have to own the property, to apply, or at least have an ironclad purchase agreement to acquire the property. Without that, we would not be able to apply for that funding. And then the EPA generally wants to fund projects that clean up contamination entirely, not just part of it. So it wouldn't just be what's on the DOT site that the city is looking to purchase. It would be looking to clean up the entire contamination, which some of it is under other buildings, businesses, and so on. So there is a third program DNR suggested, and that's the Iowa Economic Development Authority Redevelopment Tax Credit Program. That provides up to $1.5 million in assistance per property, but it does not appear that cities are eligible for this program. There are some ways to get around it if you partnered with a private entity or a nonprofit, but that could take a long time, get agreements put in place, and so on. The additional idea that the Iowa DNR mentioned just in regards to mitigation would be installing a pump and treat system. So we have shared with council before what we call dewatering is once the hole is being dug for the building, a lot of groundwater would fill that hole. We would have to get a lot of water out, and if it's contaminated, treat that water. The pump and treat would be doing it on the northeast corner of the site. So it would require a much lower volume of water to be treated if it's contaminated than if we did the dewatering. So it's something that we don't have a lot of information. It was just an idea that we would need to look at. Just some clarification. We did ask about the double cased well for the geothermal well, and right now they indicated they do not have enough information to give us any direction on whether or not we would be required to do it. I have been playing phone tag with somebody from the well program with the DNR, but we just have not been able to hook up. And hopefully we'll be able to do that and provide you some additional information at the 23rd meeting. The DNR private well program would, though, require strict construction standards in order to provide protection to the buried sand and gravel aquifer. Again, geothermal wells, go vertical, and that's what their concern is. If there is contamination, if the contamination travels along those vertical pipes and goes down into the other aquifers, that's their biggest concern. And then there was some clarification regarding water piping materials. Does not affect a service line. We would need to use alternative piping material if it was a water main on the site. So some of these things, we asked them if we should do it. We should do some of these things, even if it's not required. They would not give us guidance on that. That would be a decision that the city would need to make. And just an example, they did give us a proposal for another pump and treat system that was done at another location. And there the cost range was anywhere from $78,000 to $93,000 per year of water treatment monitoring and reporting. So that's just some new information that we have received, since the last meeting. In the packet, there was also a number of emails, that were included, that were received after the last meeting as well. I'm not going to go through those. You've had a chance to read them. But I would entertain any questions of the information that I shared if you have any.
Council, any questions for Keith? Gloria?
I do have a question. How long would we anticipate that we would have to have the pump and treat system being monitored and reported? I see we've got the annual cost range. Do we know whether that's going to be for the lifetime of that site, or is there the potential that it would not be?
No, I'll answer what I think, but I think we would need to get some more information from the DNR on this. But I think the pump and treat system is really during construction. Really what you're doing is trying to get that groundwater at the source of contamination out of the ground. So when you are doing the construction and groundwater may start flowing, that contamination is already out and very little of it will migrate to your construction site. So I'm going to guess that it's mainly for the construction aspect, but there may be a need for some other monitoring wells in other locations. But that's something we could find out, Gloria.
Any other questions, Gloria?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Amber, Rachel, any questions?
No, thank you.
Right. So we're going to move forward then, and I'm going to go through these in the order that I have them. And so we'll have, first of all, Kat Brightback, followed by Michael Lee, and then Jonathan Bunge. And so try to give you a little bit of heads up of where you are in the batting order. So please state your name and your address, and we'll try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. So Kat?
Kat Brightbach, 113 South Maple Avenue. I'm here representing my 9-year-old and 10-year-old. They wanted me to share their comments with you this evening about the location of the aquatic center.
And your address, Kat?
113 South Maple.
Okay, sure, thanks.
Yeah. Did I write it wrong on the card?
No, I just want to make sure I heard it.
Cool. They said, "Man, mommy, a water park within walking distance, that sounds kind of cool. Do we have to pay for it?" And I said, yeah, sadly we do. Probably. And then they said, "But we can go to the park for free." I said, "You're not wrong." And they said, "Well," so they would put the park there, but with the aquatic center there with the park stay. And I said, not there. "Well, where would it be?" I said, "I don't know yet," which they were not overly thrilled about either. But they said, "Well, mommy, if they have another spot that could be the spot for it to be, why can't it go there?" And I said, "Well, the soil's dirty." They said, "Oh, well, why don't they clean it up? Shouldn't they do that anyway?" And I said, "Well, I mean, you have a point." So they said, "Well, I think that I would like to keep my park, and maybe they can find a different spot for the aquatic center." So from the mouths of babes, that's their opinion as 9 and 10-year-olds. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Our next up will be Jonathan Bunge, followed by Paul Atom.
Didn't you say Mike?
So I apologize. Michael Lee, then, yeah, apologies. Yep. Then Jonathan Bunge and Paul Atom.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Or wherever you are? Woman out there.
Yes.
So greetings, Michael Lee from 214 South Maple Avenue. and I'm here today to explain how and why the idea to replace ONeil Park with a pool is a bad idea and should not be considered. First of all, within a few hundred feet of the park, there are 9 apartment buildings and several hundred residents. So ONeil Park is the backyard for people who live there, and the park is used for free by many people to enjoy nature, relax, and recreate. So if ONeil Park is converted into an indoor pool, then their backyard is gone forever. So conversion of ONeil Park into an indoor pool will increase the carbon footprint because the total green space of the park will become buildings and pavement. Also, a substitute park to the west of ONeil Park will very likely require the removal of several large trees, insertion of some concrete, some pavement for parking, clearing ground for equipment. So that's not smart. There have been 2 recent failed referendums that involved indoor pools. You will always hear from the people who lost elections. So it is logical that the people who voted in favor of the indoor pools continue to seek a pool. So why not have another referendum of some type? That way, it will not be necessary to rely on anecdotal evidence about people telling you about the need for a pool and an indoor walking track. I mean, have they tried walking at the mall? I mean, we have expectations and aims for good local government that should be decided by votes, not anecdotes. So ONeil Park originated as a compromise in 1941 between the city and Henry and Clem O'Neill. They wanted to expand their dairy operation and needed the city to rezone land. In exchange, they gave the city land to become a city park. Subsequently, 2 of Henry's 3 sons died while serving in the U.S. military in World War II, and the O'Neills stopped the expansion of their business, but they honored their donation to the city. So instead of an indoor pool on ONeil Park, the city should be building a statue in honor of the O'Neill children. Lieutenant Charles O'Neill died in 1944. Lieutenant James O'Neill died in 1945. They're both Ames natives, Ames High School graduates, ISU alumni. They're true local heroes, and a statue would be a great decision and part of a better solution. So I know times have changed in Ames and at ONeil Park, and it's time to build a statue, not a pool, at ONeil Park.
Thank you. Jonathan Bunge, followed by Paul Atom, and then Erin Shriver.
Greetings, City Council. My name is Jonathan Bunge. My wife, Sarah, and our 4-year-old son, Sam, and we live at 226 South Maple Avenue. I just want to say, the city doesn't seem to have conducted any park usage study. So my unique perspective of being the only single-family dwelling directly north of ONeil Park, I think is relevant to filling in that void. I can personally speak to the growing usage of the park since moving there in August of 2011. Throughout the years, I have frequently talked with the Parks and Recs department, emailing them, talking about, you're not coming and emptying the one garbage can in the park. The garbage is overflowing and with the southerly winds blowing into my yard. Then it was, can you consider getting a second garbage can put in the park? That was eventually done. I was very thankful to them. Next, it was, can you come and empty the 2 garbage cans in the park more frequently? I would take pictures of the garbage cans frequently after weekends, especially after weekends, garbage sitting there. And then, we live in Iowa, big winds coming into my backyard. I send pictures of both the park, what it looked like, and also the street. Garbage would be laying in the street and then in my yard. So while it's not a study, I can tell you that I'm probably one of the best people, along with the people who also live on the 300 block of South Maple to the west of the park. We are your survey right now. We can attest to that. I think our city should really slow down this process to find a spot that all citizens can feel good about. You know, we've already waited several years for this indoor facility after the failed 2019 citywide vote. Yes, on paper, $10 million from the state does make a difference. And I think most of us here want this facility in some way or shape or form to come to the city. I don't think any of us are anti-indoor aquatic center. But I don't believe that money, even a great of sum of $10 million, is worth risking the balance of a neighborhood, worth upsetting the backyards, literally backyards of some of us in our neighborhood, changing our neighborhood forever. I just don't think that's worth it. You know, to the people who don't live in our neighborhood, it's easier for them to say, oh yeah, let's build it. Well, I would say to them, how about you wake up one day and be told, yeah, we're going to put this huge building across the street from you. I don't think too many people in my situation and in my neighborhood situation would be okay with that. It sometimes borders on, I think, the city almost overstepping the bounds. And I would say if this goes through in ONeil Park, I would say to fellow Ames citizens, watch out, what's coming next? What could move into your neighborhood when you don't want it? Another question is, you know, has anyone in our town gone and visited other facilities similar to the proposed one in Iowa? Have they talked with other facilities? How are those facilities financially supported and viable? I raise this question because, you know, it'll cost money to get into this center. There are a lot of low and middle income residents in our neighborhood, and I don't believe they will be catered to, because I think the middle and upper classes in our town will be the ones who can afford to get in. I don't believe that these redevelopment dollars should be put to use bulldozing a park. We should be redeveloping centers, the core centers of our town, where we drive by every day and see empty buildings, empty lots. And I know it's extra work to buy these out and form a new property to build a building. I get it. It's easy to do this, to put into ONeil Park, but it's for all the wrong reasons. And I would hate it to be on your conscience and in your city council's legacy that you're the ones that rubber stamped this project to go there.
If you could wrap up your comments.
Sure. Lastly, I forget where I read this or heard this from. Mr. Abraham mentioned he drove by ONeil Park, didn't see anyone using it. You know, if that's the basis for determining how much a park is used, then I believe the city should start developing several parks that I frequently drive by and find either vacant at any random time, or when I take my 4-year-old son to visit other parks, we're the only ones there. So, you know, if that's the basis for determining a park's usage, then there are lots of parks in this town that I should think are free game for development. And I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. All right. Paul Atom will be next, followed by Erin Shriver and Jamie Dimon.
Hello, I'm Paul Adama, and I live at 229 South Russell Avenue. I'd like to say I support the proposed pool project at ONeil Park. In addition to this, many of the people that I've talked to along South Russell and South Riverside also support the pool project. I encourage them to email the council. I believe that the council can build at the ONeil site while addressing neighborhood concerns, and I think the pool would be a great addition to the neighborhood. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. All right. Erin Shriver, followed by Jamie Dimon, and then Jenny Lawrence.
Hello, my name is Erin Shriver, and my husband John and my 2 teenage boys live at 202 South Maple Avenue. I've been in that house since 2002 and in the neighborhood since 1998. I agree with much of what's already been said today and at the last meeting. I wrote a long reasoned letter to all of you. I hope you had a chance to read it. I had intended on recounting that letter in a reasoned and even approach tonight, but as I laid awake last night, I became more and more angry about this entire proposition. So instead, I'd like to clear up a couple of points that I don't think have been addressed, and then I'll share a couple of final thoughts. First, I want to address the misunderstanding regarding the comparison between Miracle Park and Ines Grove building the Aquatic Center at ONeil Park. I'm sorry, Miracle Park at Ines Grove and building the Aquatic Center at ONeil Park. When Miracle Park was completed, it opened a much needed space for members of our community. It also retained much of the green space, walking trails, wooded areas, and playground equipment originally part of Ines Grove. If the Aquatic Center is located at ONeil Park, it would take up 100% of the space. Not a portion of the park, the entire park. I have heard several people say that the city should simply put a pool in the corner of ONeil Park. The ONeil Park lot is the same size as the Oak Avenue lot. And the current plans for Oak Avenue pave the entire north half of the lot for parking, and the building takes up all of the southern portion of the lot. It's hard to imagine the scale of this proposal while standing at the Oak Avenue site, but stand in the middle of ONeil Park where you can see all four corners and visualize this. It's an enormous, enormous building that you're all proposing and would take up the entirety of the space. Next, I'd like to address the issue of usage. And Jonathan said some of the same things I was going to say. The council was enthusiastic about the numbers that Mr. Abraham shared a couple weeks ago about prior pool usage and what we might expect with a new facility. These are documented numbers from admissions data. Many of the folks here have shared or could share stories of frequent to constant use of the park by the community. However, these stories are anecdotal and cannot be properly quantified. If park usage is an important metric for making this decision, then a proper usage study should be commissioned and no decision should be made until that is complete. For that matter, if site usage is an important number to consider and we want to build on the least used site, there should be a usage study at the Oak Avenue site as well. How many people use that city block in a year? Will it increase if a pool is built there? I would share, like Jonathan did, at different times over the years, my children have been the only ones on the equipment at Brookside, Banshell, Ines Grove, and Emma McCarthy Lee Parks. One or two drive-bys cannot determine and quantify the usage of a space. We don't know how many times ONeil Park is used in a year. What if it's being used 100,000 times? Would that change what your consideration and your vote is? What if it's only used 15,000 times a year? Would that influence you? If usage is important to the decision-making process, please request a proper usage study of both Oak Avenue and ONeil Park to determine what volume of use we would actually be exchanging for 50,000 pool users. There are two safety issues I want to raise.
If we could sort of wrap things up.
Yep, I'll go fast. First, regarding the suggestion that ONeil Park play equipment could be moved to the green space west of its current location. From a distance, that looks like a big green empty area, but I remind you, there used to be single-family houses in that area, and after repeated flooding, the homes were condemned and torn down with the caveat that nothing be built there. The other concern has to do more with public perception. I've been asked by more than one person if I thought the public would embrace the Oak Avenue site knowing it had been contaminated. My answer to that lies in the hundreds of kids, including my own, who play baseball and soccer at Hunsaker Youth Sports Complex and walk their dogs at the Ames Dog Park. The Ames City Council on its current website assures us that the area is now Hunsaker Youth Sports Complex and the Ames Dog Park are perfectly safe for use after they mitigated the radiation leak from back in the 1950s.
Okay, if I could have you wrap things up. I've given you a lot of extra time.
Okay. So what I'm saying is I have no doubt the city would be able to assure us that the pool is safe as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have Jamie Diamond, followed by Jenny Lawrence and Judy Lemish. And I'll try really hard to keep you at 3 minutes. It's just, I want to keep things fair for everyone. So I'll give a little bit of latitude, but if you could try to stay within that. So go ahead.
My name is Jamie Diamond, and I live at 114 South Russell with my wife and 2 school-age children. We've lived there since 2007. I know that city staff is working very hard, and I appreciate their efforts. However, they are working off of the council's requests for specific information. Our neighborhood is asking the council to have the staff put in additional hard work to save our park. In the previous city council session, there were statistics suggesting that the annual usage for an indoor pool could be as high as 50,000 people. This was used as evidence that more people would use the pool than the park. I realize that this is probably true, but when asked about park usage, the response was about an anecdotal drive-by and a phrase in effect saying, "It's too hard to measure. We don't really know." I want staff to find out more. The $2.9 million is the number thrown around as our savings by destroying ONeil Park. But clearly, we've never properly valued what a green space is worth in dollars to a neighborhood or a community or an ecosystem fighting climate change. Find out more. We were told that the IDOT has supposedly said they will not adjust their sale price of the original site based on the new environmental concerns. But in the presentation on July 26th, option 1B as presented by the staff was to request a new appraisal for the property. Find out more. The city has said that the area along Iowa Creek could be a potential site for relocating our park, but there were many concerns about whether this was possible given the flooding that regularly occurs there. Please find out more. I understand and appreciate that sometimes a small number of individuals need to make a sacrifice for the rest of the community. Ames needs an indoor community pool. I would guess that the vast majority of the people in the room and in my neighborhood understand that and want that too. It would also be great if we had an indoor walking track. But the fact of the matter is, we tried to get a bond for those ideas. The vote for the big building with all the things failed and was voted down. That was our shot at a pool and track and all those other things. Now you need to focus on building a pool, and you can do that on the original site. An expansion to add the track can come later when the funds are available. Our neighborhood is not saying don't build the pool. The actual choice you have in front of you is not either a pool or not a pool. The choice is either a pool with an intact neighborhood park or a pool with a track. The choice is either a pool with an opportunity to clean up a mess or a pool that removes a green space that sequesters carbon. The choice is either correcting the past policies of this city that allowed a gas station to close and leave its pollution and tanks in the ground, or a change that will affect the long-term viability of our neighborhood. The choice is either honoring the spirit of the donation from the ONeil family or ignoring your commitment to accessibility. The choice is either meaning it when you use the phrase urban renewal area or removing a beloved park from one of the oldest neighborhoods in town. The easy decisions have already been made. We figured out the answers to the simple problems with easy solutions. All we have left are the difficult problems with difficult solutions. That is where we are at now. We start making the hard, costly decisions now so that sometime in our future, our kids get to make the easy ones again. I urge the council to use the original property at 122 North Oak Avenue or widen your search to find a property that does not destroy our neighborhood park. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Jenny Lawrence, Judith Mish, and Mike Sullivan.
I'm Jenny Lawrence. I live at 320 South Hazel Avenue. I moved to Ames 20 years ago, and I've actually lived the last 16 years at my house. But then the 4 years prior to that, I was actually at the apartments right north of the park itself. So when I came to Ames, I was a full-time student, single mom. That literally what the gentleman said earlier was the apartments, the people that live in those apartments, that's their backyard. That was our backyard. I had a kid. We went to the park all the time. And I was just thinking, sitting here listening to it, that if the indoor aquatic center was at that time is at the park location at the time I lived there, that would have been nice, but it wouldn't have been something I could have afforded at that time. But the park was free and something. And so I've been blessed to be able to live on South Hazel the last 16 years. And my younger son, I've taken him to the park. My husband and I never bought a playground for our son because I'm like, the park's a block away. I just think that the indoor aquatic center is a great idea, just not at that location. I think it would destroy our neighborhood or just change the demographic of our neighborhood. And putting it at the North Oak Avenue would be a much better location or someplace else. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Our next speaker will be Judith Mish, followed by Mike Sullivan and Betty Barton.
Hello there. My name is Judith Mish. I live at 327 South Maple on the corner of South Maple and South Forest. So I am right across the street from the park. So I'm going to begin with a few things. The definition of revitalization is to bring back into use or activity. The definition of reinvestment is to spend time, money, and or effort on something to make it more useful. So why did the city of Ames decide this reinvestment district endeavor was necessary in the first place? I keep asking myself this. Evidently, Ames has determined as a community what is considered more valuable and what is not. We are now in the business of picking economic winners and losers. The city removed businesses deemed not valuable and wants to reinvest time, money, and effort to gain state funding to revitalize the properties these businesses were located on. Ames wants to make us all think that the new properties located on this link site will bring greater profit and bring activity to the central part of town to enhance and make the downtown corridor more useful and desirable. So now enter the need for a new indoor aquatic center. The city is chasing state of Iowa money to get a twofer in this instance, the link reinvestment development and the pool. After putting a lot of time and money into a site now deemed too difficult and costly to develop, Ames wants to continue its search for state funds without giving up the link project. In order to accomplish this, the city determined an established neighborhood park is the best alternative to the contaminated DOT site. A park, by definition, is a public garden. A concrete box and a parking slab don't fit my definition of a public garden. This is not an equivalent trade. I have unfortunately taken note of the city's reluctance recently to reconsider the Brownfield DOT site. Mitigation of this site is the most ethical and publicly responsible choice in my mind, because we must address the relics of our overzealous industrial past. Whether or not public funding is available for this mitigation or not, this site is most in keeping with the spirit of the revitalization and reinvestment plan. I do, however, have other choices. My previous suggestion at the last council meeting of scrapping or altering the link site still stands. We either buy back all or a portion of it. A public exercise and recreational facility on this site will be a bigger draw to downtown than all or part of what is currently proposed for this area. And in conclusion, if you want to put that up, this is ONeil Park, right across the street from me at sunrise. In conclusion, no public park should ever be considered for complete removal. This is a slippery slope and sets a dangerous precedent. Although these days, precedent and historical value don't mean squat. Our lack of respect for the ONeil family's considerable gift is shameful. What is equally shameful is the lack of consideration for the public good. To those who want to destroy this park, may I remind you, it is government's job to look after the public good. Trading a free for use established green space for a fee for use paved over space is not looking after the public good. Having both of these spaces is both economically and environmentally sound public policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We have Mike Sullivan next, followed by Betty Barton and Barrett Randall.
Good evening, City Council, City Manager Schenker, City staff. My name is Mike Sullivan. I live at 2018 Burnett Avenue. I do want to disclose I work for the Iowa DNR. I serve on the City of Ames Planning and Zoning Commission and the Iowa Department of Human Rights Board, and I'm a member of a church here in Ames, Lutheran Church of Hope. However, I'm commenting today as a citizen, a taxpayer, a neighbor, a husband, and most importantly, father to 4 young children. Please understand my comments represent only my personal views and not those of any organization I represent. But first of all, I just wanted to commend the city council on the work and city staff on the work they've done in investigating this issue. I know it's a difficult issue. I know citing a pool and aquatic center like this, given the history of the issue in Ames and with the history of the site at 122 North Oak Avenue, that's tough. It's a difficult road to hoe. But what I wanted to say is, and I'm going to cut it shorter because I know we're short on time, but please take into account all of the input and investigation in the previous weeks. And I would encourage you not to delay action much longer. We need a pool. We need an indoor pool in Ames, and we need to look at the best option for that and take action and do that. So ultimately, my support is whether it's ONeil Park or 122 North Oak Avenue. Do the remaining investigation, but don't let this go on too much longer. With every passing day, construction costs increase. There are other projects funded by this reinvestment district program that have now been delayed because of rising construction costs. And so I would encourage you to not deliberate much longer on this decision, to make a decision between one of those 2 sites and build a pool because we need it. My 4-year-old and my 2-year-old desperately need something to do in the winter in Ames. There's not a whole lot to do indoors for young kids. And I would really support, I supported the Healthy Life Center. I support this. And so please move forward expeditiously, taking into account all the important information. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Betty Barton, followed by Barrett Randall and Sue Ravenscroft.
Okay. My name is Betty Barton, and I live at 815 Onyx Circle, Ames. I moved to Ames 55 years ago, and I am older than any of you. And I have lobbied for and voted for 3 different bond issues that would have improved the woefully lacking public venues for aquatic exercises in this town, yet they failed. One of those failed votes meant that we had no outdoor pool in the summer of 1983. Now, you weren't on the council, but somebody was. After the most recent loss, you promised us, and that means you, that we would only have to wait 2 years for a site that would meet, and now we learned that redevelopment grant money that did seem to us that this was a win-win situation. Why have you not broken ground by now? Half of the 2 years is even up. The latest news is that this site needs contamination mitigation, but instead of making plans to do what is needed to be done to that site, you are entertaining the idea of removing a public park as an alternative site. My words are, what a horrible idea. First, I believe the moral thing to do is to prepare this proposed site to be useful for this purpose. It's been done before. It meets the needs of the grant money. It's been done before, like the dog park, the soccer fields, the airport. We could go on and on. There's history. You and the city councils before you have failed to care enough about the health and well-being of all ages during the long winter months, when aquatic exercises from swimming lessons for toddlers and up, lap swims for all ages, aquatic exercise for all ages, and the easiest of all, indoor walking, but all require an indoor facility. I understand that we lose families who work in Ames to live in communities such as Ankeny that provide such public venues, indoor pool, indoor walking track, better bike trails. As a retired dietitian, I care about the rise in obesity among our younger folk and among our special needs populations. Please consider this as a valid amenity, a vital amenity that should be put on the fast track and not throw out red flags. I think all the publicity that this park horrible idea is only going to hurt us in the vote situation. Considering what has happened in the past, perhaps you need to get a marketing plan that invest in a marketing plan, since the private fitness folks with their money and greed blanketed the town with unfair literature, which cost us the last failed vote. Just mentioning the possibility of taking away a park when it is not necessary is going to hurt your public relations before you even start preparing for the vote. Please look carefully at your opposition, people, and consider where the money is behind it. Just do what you can to just get this going. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. All right, our next speaker will be Barrett Randall, followed by Sue Ravenscroft and Susie Petra. And I just have one other card after that, so if there are other speakers who would like to speak, you'll be free to do that, but I'm going to go through these cards first. So, Barrett.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Barrett Randall. I'm here on behalf of Randall Corporation at 420 South 17th here in Ames. And I know it is a little bit out of the standard protocol, so to speak, but just want to make a matter of public record. And I want to thank the council for giving us opportunity to propose an alternative site. And what I'm referring to, of course, is a lot that we own at 1325 South 4th Street, about 4 blocks west of ONeil Park. It's a large, empty, undeveloped lot that we have. And I do know, we just very recently, and you'll forgive me for this, just very recently came to my attention that this was alternative. And so we put together a quick proposal for you guys to consider. And just want to say thank you for taking an opportunity to receive that. And wanted to make one very brief clarification on that behalf. I know that there was some concern. Obviously, our business is development. So it's not, the land to us is valuable as a speculative development in some fashion. However, that being said, knowing that it has its limitations with part of it being in a floodplain and whatnot, we saw an opportunity for either the aquatic center, potentially with modifications to use that spot, or perhaps be an alternative location for effectively ONeil Park, being 4 blocks west. So our lot is directly north of the Iway Creek. So as you will see, I mean, we put together a proposal, admittedly, in some ways as an alternative to the North Oak proposed site. And in many ways, if there's any questions that you guys had, I wanted to make sure there's clarification, primarily because of the expediency of the next process, knowing this was one of our last opportunities to have any insight into that, just regarding that site specifically, our availability or interest in making it available to sale. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker will be Sue Ravenscroft, followed by Susie Petra, and then Amy Logan.
Sue Ravenscroft. I live at 455 Westwood. I'd like to address 3 points. I support those letter writers and people who have suggested you stay with the DOT site. We know pollution causes lasting problems, which will not go away on their own. Is it ethical to walk away from that lot and pass the problems on to our children, some of whose parents are here tonight? Not doing remediation now means some other party will have to pay even more in the future. But we thought that was a good location, and it still is. Yes, the remediation cost will have to be paid, but we have a way to make sure that it doesn't increase the city's out-of-pocket cost. Staff has questioned the appraisal and should be encouraged to further investigate that, as well as revising the price. In addition, the state may have grants for remediation, but we have a really big ace in the hole, folks. The DOT site is part of a complex arrangement
is occasioned by the link, and therefore those who profit from the link should share in the true cost of developing the reinvestment district. I suggest that we reduce the planned $30 million TIF by the amount of any remediation cost. The TIF excuses the developer from paying up to $30 million in property taxes, but the city isn't obligated to give that to him or to give that much. If the link project is viable on its own, it should not need such a handout from the public. Reducing the TIF by the amount the public would otherwise have to pay for remediation is only fair. As a retired accounting professor, I assure you that the budgetary impact, the bottom line cash flow is the same, whether the city pays remediation and is reimbursed by DOT or the state, or negotiates a lower price and pays the remediation ourselves, or if we pay the remediation and then collect more taxes from the developer by reducing the TIF. The cost of the remediation is not really a consideration when you consider we have a $30 million TIF that we can bargain with. We can give the developer a lower TIF and collect our money that way. That's a really big cushion. My second point is, if you reject the DOT site after all, I really think we should use the link site. And I would substitute the aquatic center for one of the residential buildings because we're not sure about the demand for that. We would avoid overbuilding. We'd enhance the attractiveness of that complex considerably. It would make the link a real destination for residents year-round. It would provide wonderful swimming facilities for the hotel guests and for the residents in the one residential building, and would probably generate some retail sales that would go to the $10 million that's supposed to offset the bond costs partially. I have a third point. There was a staff report that was referenced in the press release, and in the penultimate paragraph, there's a brief reference to arbitrage penalties. Now, those are really, you probably know what those are, Tim. Those are really complicated, right? And the public would probably benefit from having an explanation of what arbitrage penalties are and when and whether the city is likely to have to pay those, what the circumstances would be that would generate those arbitrage penalties, because we want to avoid those. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Susie Petra, followed by Amy Logan.
Well, I hope when I said back to Dove's on Sue, but I couldn't hear her well enough. Susie Petra, 2011 Duff Avenue. I understand that the site for our anticipated indoor pool necessitates financial, environmental, sustainability, safety, and marketing decisions. I do think that the DOT location can be environmentally mediated. It is financially feasible with grants and DOT assistance. Do I think that locating our community's indoor pool so near an extremely busy intersection of Lincoln Way and Grand is wise? Given the amount of traffic there, however, absolutely not. The current map of the reinvestment district had to contort itself to include that site. It really does not fit visually or actually in a cohesive destination district. Further, destroying the green space that is ONeil Neighborhood Park, a haven free for over 70 years, is a hasty choice, given all the solid factors expressed by dozens of citizens. This site needs to be eliminated from consideration, especially so given the city's expressed desire to be a net zero city. So, we are presented with two overall choices, are we not? Find a site within the reinvestment district map, or look at sites outside, not within that bizarre tangled map. Looking at the convoluted reinvestment district map, we can either look at two sites within that cleaner, more compact district, or we can look outside the map. So let's look at sitting a pool within that compact map. That, of course, means that the city can hope to recoup some financials. to offset the cost. Sitting the pool outside that map means that we need to look at the properties the city already owns, if costs are a determining factor. And the former carpool area is one example, that's outside the reinvestment area. So now let's look at the two possibilities within that map boundaries that we've been talking about, pros and cons. One, looking seriously at making a destination district. The Munn Lumber former water plant coal storage area is a must consideration. We own the land. We should mitigate some areas if necessary. There's plenty of area for an indoor walking track. And by the way, that was found to be a must at the extensive League of Women Voters study. More important by far than an indoor-outdoor water slide, if we have to make choices. And the location is a great anchor. It is near Brookside, the band shell, not Brookside, the band shell, within walking distance of cafes, the library, shopping. Secondly, well, while the Munn location beats bulldozing, the second option that we talked about last time, the newly paved parking lot behind City Hall, I do think the Munn site beats that because no houses would need to be bought and no new parking would need to be bulldozed either. So that covers the two sites that we own that we've been talking about. And I'd like you to seriously consider the Munn site because we haven't talked about that much. So let's consider also seriously that Winkle Black blighted area, the Link, located between Lincoln Way and the railroad tracks. A parking ramp has already been proposed. We could also use that ramp for pool parking.
Susie, if
Our
you could wrap
pool
up
would
your
be
comments.
far better visual than the proposed things that are there. And of course, the city does not own it. One problem, of course, is Lincoln Way traffic again. But I do think these are the strongest sites. The Munn site and the Link, because they could be destinations for downtown. All in all, there's much to consider. Let's not be hasty. It's already been 13 years since Carpool was closed. We do need a facility that is a decision that works for us all.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amy Logan.
Hi, I'm Amy Logan, and I live at 622 Ridgeward Avenue in Ames. And I just wanted to express what an anomaly ONeil Park is. It's surrounded by, this big Iowa DOT complex to its east and south a little bit. And then further, there's also lots and lots of concrete in the Hy-Vee Lincoln Center. And then it's just, there's a lot of apartments. And as a former resident of one of those apartments, I think that having a nice open green space in a walkable space was an oasis. It was really nice to have that, especially being, a person that doesn't have land easily accessible. So that's one thing. And then another thing, me and my children and my husband, we're all avid park users, and we use the parks nearer to our house more, Brookside and Roosevelt, but we consider ONeil one of our secondary parks, as well as Bandshell and Old Town. I mean, if we can walk there, we're going to be there at some point. And so I see it as an asset, and it's not something that we can just, we're not going to see a nice green space like that open up in the middle of the city again, probably. So it's just important to keep what we have. So thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, those are all the cards I have. but this would be the time, if there are other people who would like to speak on this subject, feel free to do that. Again, we'll keep it at 3 minutes, and please state your name and address.
I'm Merlin Fonkook, 1424 Kellogg Avenue. I apologize to everyone. I got here so late and in such a hurry, I left my mask in the pickup. And if it looks like I lost a boxing match, that's not so. I had eyelid surgery. Well, I don't think the DOT site is great by any means. I think you need to move forward with that or we lose more time. You've already lost a month over our city manager's over concern about the environmental aspects of the site and looked at choosing ONeil Park. What a dreadful idea. I think there must be some way to negotiate with the DOT that 2.9 million appears to be based on no environmental contamination. And it's just ludicrous for them to maintain that they're going to get that price. I don't think that would hold up in court. And I suggest you get tougher with them. Yeah, I know that. I imagine they want to be tough too, but that's just ludicrous. You started down the road for the DOT site in December 2020. It began with Chuck Winkelbach of Hunziker proposing an ambitious project for between Clark and Kellogg on Lincoln Way as part of a reinvestment district, with the aquatic center to receive sales tax receipts, state sales tax receipts from the project. The council bid on this without much examination. At least two of us asked you not to join the aquatic center with the link. And two Ravenscrofts told you that the estimated 15 million in revenue that could be returned to Ames was fiction. But you plunged ahead. And now 19 months later, we are nowhere near an aquatic center unless you choose the DOT site. I'll note that the two reinvestment district projects in Des Moines have both been delayed because of funding issues. And the hotel in the East Village was scrapped. I don't know what will happen to the link, but it doesn't look good. There have been supply issues and fluctuating materials prices, and now interest rates have jumped. I'm really disappointed with the lack of transparency to this whole project. Why isn't the public receiving periodic reports on where this project is at? I don't even know if the council knows where it's at. City Manager Shanker, I think that's disgraceful. You're trying to run the whole damn show. We need to keep in mind that the aquatic center will serve the community for decades, maybe a half century. So I ask you to move forward with the DOT site and add back the indoor walking track and multi-purpose room. Give us an aquatic center that we can be proud of and quit dithering.
Thank you. All right.
Got one more.
And so if you would like to speak, why don't you sort of line up there? How many people will still like to speak? Just if I get a show of hands. So just two more. So yeah, if you just give your card here.
It's 3.
Thank you so much.
My name is Joy Williams. I live at 1317 North 2nd Street. And I'd like to bring up a couple things that haven't been brought up. Number one, I'm a water well driller by trade. I studied water well drilling for 2 years and then worked as a water well driller in central Iowa. I've heard a lot of people say that you think the contamination issues can be addressed and resolved at the DOT site. Where did you come to that conclusion? I'd like to see a lot more information. Number one, what are the contaminants? What is the proposal for denaturing them or cleaning them up? What are you going to do? Usually in a cleanup system, the water gets dumped somewhere. Is it going to come running down North 2nd Street and go right into Iowa Creek? What's going to happen? Or are they going to haul it out by trucks and dump it somewhere in the country? So that's a question. I haven't seen any, reports about exactly what's in there and what the proposal is going to be. And decontamination issues do get very costly to try to resolve. Number one, I heard the comparison about the park, Hunsaker and the dog park. I go to the dog park almost every day. There's a huge difference between
Ms. Williams, if you
having
could, I
something
apologize
covered.
for interrupting. If you could address the council
Sure.
in part because we're going to lose some sound and council member Betcher.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
There's a big difference in putting a pool, which could get cracks in the concrete and have infiltration into the pool, into water, compared to something like a park that's covered by vegetation. It's not a fair comparison to say that, well, because it worked at Hunsaker Field, that the public perception accepted it later. I don't think that will be the case with a pool. Somebody ends up with cancer or an illness and they'll blame the city pool and the city could be in a lawsuit. Has anybody looked at the legal ramifications of that? Another issue, the city can't get employees to work at the splash park at Brookside. That's closing in August 15th. That's crazy. If we can't get lifeguards and other employees, why are we even looking at a pool? Now, I grew up in the Twin Cities going to the YMCA almost every day. I would ride my bike 3 miles to a YMCA, took swimming lessons, became a lifeguard. I loved to have a pool. So did my whole family, to have the YMCA. But I really think there are a lot more things that need to be thought through, maybe for the city to try to lure a YMCA to town rather than try to do it on its own for the city. And then a third point, at the time that the DOT bought the St. Cecilia school site, I happened to live catty corner from there, next to what's currently the Hunsaker garage site. It's a site that was an old 1910 farmhouse. And I remember going to the meeting where Lee Hammer, the DOT facilities coordinator, was talking to the neighborhood about the DOT buying the site. And he assured us, despite my concerns, that if the DOT owned that site, it would not impact the neighborhood. Well, before it was a nice school site, it does have a lot of green space. People go there, hang out. I go there, sit with my dogs. There is still, a fair amount of green space there around the DOT. And keep in mind that site historically was an elementary school, and it fit that niche for the North Oak neighborhood, just like ONeil Park fits the niche for the South Oak neighborhood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Okay.
Logan, and my street is 622 Richard Avenue. I don't want ONeil to be the pool.
Okay. Thank you. That's our youngest input, I think we've heard for a while. Good to start civic engagement young. Okay. If you can just give the card up here. Thank you so much.
You're not as cute.
It's okay, none of us are.
My name's Caleb Whitehouse. I live at 1003 Lincoln Way. That's right across Oak Street from the DOT site. I have two sons in the back that will use the pool wherever it is located, but we would all like it to be in the DOT lot. My main concern, however, is that if the city doesn't use the DOT lot, what's going to happen to that? Because I don't anticipate a private developer will come in and clean up the lot and build something that I would prefer to a city pool. And I'd rather not live across the street from another gas station. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. All right. Last call. Okay, so I'm going to consider the public input portion of our time closed. Again, I want to reiterate that you may have additional ideas, thoughts, suggestions, questions, and you are welcome to continue to email the council. That's part of our process of hearing from the community. So there's some people who feel more comfortable with that format, and so we encourage that. At this time, I'm going to turn it back to the council. And again, this is not a time for us to deliberate, but an opportunity for us to ask some questions of staff to help clarify. I think there's value while this conversation is fresh on our minds. And maybe I could just start with Keith. Were there some things that you heard in the discussions that you think would be helpful for the council and for the public as a whole to hear that would be clarifying in nature?
Well, I think some of Joyce's comments with, I think that was her name, the water well driller. I think some of her comments were good and to see, and that's where with the well drilling, trying to get a hold of this person from the Iowa DNR. So I think that will be helpful information, to have, and that's the main one, I guess, that came forward. If there are alternative sites, that council wants us to look at, we could do that as well. But I think, I guess I heard that, try to do something, try to do it quickly. I think, Amber asked a question last time about what's the quickest way to get this done. The DOT site probably would be that avenue. So those are just a few thoughts.
Okay. Gloria, let me turn to you. Did you have any questions for Keith?
I did not have any questions for Keith. I would like to thank everybody for their input, and I think it's really gratifying to see so many kids in the council chamber tonight and even providing feedback for us. So I have been reading all the emails, and I greatly appreciate the varied opinions.
Great. Thank you, Gloria. So other council members, any questions for Keith?
I just have a couple of things written down that I think we should clarify. So staff has not recommended that we get a new DOT appraisal. Could you kind of explain why that's not recommended? Maybe Steve or Keith or Brian?
Yeah. So one of the things with the appraisal, there's no guarantee, that it's going to be more favorable with the appraiser. And we've shared with you how they came about their appraisal. They didn't take the contamination into consideration. They say they've discounted, but the appraisal, but it's not anywhere in the written appraisal. So right now, and from some of the things that we have heard with interest rates going up, the time frame since the last appraisal, it could very well wind up being that the appraisal winds up coming in higher than what it is right now, and that is a concern. And I don't know if Steve has anything else to add to that.
No, it's been confusing, their approach on this or their explanation. We're not sure if they even will take into account remediation as a cost to lower it. So if the philosophy remains the same, I'm not sure we're going to get a different answer.
and asking them about potential for them helping on remediation. We've gotten nothing back. Affirmative, correct?
We've urged and on a number of occasions that we believe that number should be reduced by the cost of remediation. And they've rejected that on at least 3 or 4 occasions.
I just wanted everyone to kind of know that that's the situation that we're at with DOT. The 2.9 is pretty much going to stick and be what city has to pay if we're at that site for the purchase price plus remediation. Staff has.
So we're not going to, so Merlin, if you have other suggestions, feel free to email. We've closed public input. Rachel, any other questions? That was helpful.
So I wanted to ask, has Parks and Rec visited other indoor aquatic centers before doing our own plan, seeing kind of what other communities have done?
Yes. Yeah. And things that we do, we have through our state association, we have a fall workshop. We have a spring conference that is in different locations throughout the state of Iowa. Generally, when we're there, there's tours, and we do go to other facilities. We learn what they have, what works, what doesn't work, so on. Several years ago, I also went to it was called Rec Camp out in Colorado. And there, what they did is two full days of going through, I think it was 8 different facilities that we toured. And we went through and really looked at everything in those facilities, what worked, what didn't work, down to, what do you do with stairs? What do you do with handrails? What do you do with the pressure? How do you do walking tracks? How do you, so I came back with a lot of information, and some of that information we have already been incorporating into other projects, whether we're doing renovations or new projects. We've incorporated some of that. So we have gone and looked at other places and continually tried to learn what's working and what's not working.
Thank you.
Amber, any questions?
Keith, maybe you could just comment real briefly. When we're looking at sites for potential Parks and Rec facilities, and kind of evaluating the pros and cons, how the importance of accessibility in influencing whether a site is more favorable or not. I think, there's been some implications that perhaps, council is somehow influenced by the makeup of a neighborhood or the newness of a development. And I think it's really important that accessibility is talked about in how we evaluate locations.
Yeah, well, and accessibility is a couple of different things. I think one is, how do people get to the site? So we look at SciRide. When we're putting things in, is it on the SciRide route? Are there good bike paths and accessible bike paths where it would say that people can go without maybe having to cross busy streets and so on. So how do people get there? That's one of the things that we look at. And you heard Grant talk earlier during public forum about you can go by car, or you can go by bike, or you can go by walking. Those are all things that we look at from an accessible standpoint. The other part of accessibility is how do people with disabilities, where we're guided by ADA. And currently what we're doing is we're having an ADA audit, and that's the Americans with Disabilities Act. We've contracted with a company. They have went through all of our parks and our facilities, and they will be putting together a report and a transition plan, which will be coming before council at some point later this year. But that's what we look at too, is how are people going to get into the facilities and make sure that all components are accessible for them.
Anything else?
No.
Anita?
Thank you, and thank you to everyone who's come out and who has reached out to us. I did have just a question, just for clarification, that the staff has not made any recommendation to us for a site. What you've done is provided information to us so that council has what it needs to make a decision, but there hasn't been any statement from Parks and Rec or any other staff about preference for one site over another.
That's correct. Somebody earlier did mention about not looking at the DOT site. That is still the site that was the original. We're looking at it. But yeah, we have not made a recommendation at all.
Mm-hmm. And then I just double checking. I know we've all received a number of messages, and I would say overwhelmingly, and in fact, I can only think of one that maybe wasn't for an aquatic center at all. So it seems to me that the community is interested in our going forward with an aquatic center. Is that safe to say from what you are hearing personally as well?
Yes.
Separate from a site, but there is an appetite for an aquatic center.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And Gloria indicated you have another question?
Yes, I was just wondering, Keith, if we have determined whether the boundaries of the reinvestment district can be redrawn, or have we not pursued that question with IEDA yet?
We've had initial discussions about it. It's possible to request that be redrawn. I can't tell you whether it'll be approved or not. They didn't tell us it would be rejected out of hand, but you can certainly request that those boundaries be redrawn. I just can't guarantee it'll be approved if you ask.
Thanks.
Anyone else? I had one question for you, Keith. There were one or maybe two people that had concerns about the price of admission to an aquatic center. Can you give us just a couple sentences on the Park and Rec approach to pricing programs and admission to facilities for the public?
Yeah. So what we look at, and we have to take a look at if we have a facility that's similar to what else is being offered within the community, we take a look at that. But one of the things that through conversations, what we try to do is we try to price what a majority of people can afford, and then find ways to get people that can't afford that the ability to use that facility or that program. We do have a scholarship program, and we're looking to, the Parks and Recreation Commission has asked us to review that program and look to see if we should make any changes with that. For example, right now for our youth programs, if people can't afford, we do work with MICA, which is the Mid-Iowa Community Action. And if a family meets MICA's requirements, then their children get to use programs at a 50% discount. So that's one thing. We do that same thing with pool passes. We do family pool passes. We get a lot of people that take advantage of the scholarship program, especially with the pool passes. Now, we have also at times over the years, I've been here almost 28 years next Monday with the city of Ames, and there have been a number of times where I have received a call and somebody said, well, they even are going to struggle to pay that 50%. Said, don't worry about it. Give me the name. We'll get them in. So we want people to use these facilities. We know that people need to use them for a lot of the comments that people talked about. Betty talked about the physical activity, the obesity, all those types of things. For all those reasons, we want people to be using our activities, our programs, our facilities, and our parks. So we do what we can to get them in.
I appreciate that clarification. I was actually on council for a while before I even knew about the scholarship program. And I'm very proud of the fact that our city makes such an effort to help encourage all of our residents to use our parks and rec programs and facilities. So thanks for sharing that. Steve, is there anything else that you think would be helpful for us to cover under this item for tonight?
I don't believe so. Again, I think I want to emphasize the site that we were looking at is the DOT site. We reported back after we did due diligence. We had to tell you what we found out. And then it was the council who directed us to look at other sites closer. And given our look at the other possible sites that were closer to the existing district, we did say that the ONeil site was the best out of the top three. But we haven't recommended we have not recommended move off the DOT site, nor has City Council made a decision to move off of it. So this has been a fact-finding couple of weeks for the council to get input from interested parties about this particular site before you make a final decision. So we're hoping that you do move ahead on the 23rd and make a final decision. And I think I'll try to lay out the pros and cons of the two sites for you for what we've heard from the next time you meet. A simple kind of matrix that you could look at and make your decision accordingly. But officially, you haven't moved off that site yet. You're only exploring it. And I know it's a sensitive issue, and people are concerned that why raise it? I know a lot of people say you made up your mind. I know you haven't made up your mind, but we went to the surrounding neighbors when we were looking at the DOT site. So when you ask us to look at other sites, we thought we should go to the neighbors and introduce that concept too. So they weren't surprised when we talked about it. So I think the system is working. Now, I don't know what your final decision is going to be made, but there's a time you have to raise it with the people, and you want to raise it as soon as possible so they have enough time to learn what the positions are and arm themselves with their arguments, either pro or con. And that's what's happened today. So I actually believe the system is working, and we'll see what your final decision is on that. But we'll lay out some pros and cons, and you're going to have to make the final decision on it. I do believe for a lot of reasons we should move forward. It's not just financial. It's putting a lot of emotional stress on a lot of people. So we need to make the decision and move ahead with this. And of course, finances will play a part too.
Right. So as has been said tonight already, thank you very much for coming and sharing your thoughts. For some of you, this may have been the first time you've attended a city council meeting. And so we welcome you to come back. You could stay for the rest of the meeting if you'd like. Maybe you not want to, but you're.
How riveting will that be?
I don't know. We're going to be here. So, but again, thank you very much for coming. And we're going to bring our discussion of item 32 to a close. There's no council action tonight. Again, as we talked about, August 23rd will be the next meeting we take that up. So thank you for your participation tonight. And we will move on now to item number 33. Request from Ames Chamber of Commerce, Small Business Saturday on November 26, 2022.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item is of a kind that would normally be on the consent agenda, but there is some uniqueness to this. So normally when we have special events where the entire district, say all of downtown or all of Campus Town, is going to request a waiver of parking fees to provide free parking, the council has adopted a policy in recent years to require reimbursement to the parking fund. So the parking fund is made whole. To accomplish that, for 4 events downtown, the city council has allocated money in its budget in local option sales tax fund, which then is used to replenish the parking fund for the 4 events that Ames Main Street requests each year be made free parking to the public. The Ames Chamber is requesting an event in the Campus Town area that was not originally requested at the time of the budget. and is requesting free parking for the Campustown area for Small Business Saturday. So the question is whether the City Council wishes to honor this request and provide free parking in the Campustown area for this day and require reimbursement for the lost parking meter revenue, or transfer money from the local option sales tax fund, or provide funding from some other source, or not do the event. So that's the question before the City Council. I'm happy to answer any questions.
And our recommendation.
So the recommendation, alternative one, is to require reimbursement from the Chamber of Commerce for the event. I believe the Chamber has given us some indication in writing that they would be willing in this instance to reimburse for the free parking, but I imagine this event might be requested in future budget years.
Okay, questions? So one of the things that we think about, Brian, is the precedent this will set. So we try to act in a consistent manner with similarly situated parties. Could you help us think through the staff recommendation for alternative one and how that would impact us as a precedent going forward?
So I think the council has experienced in prior years some struggles with whether events requesting waivers of parking were setting a precedent or not, or what was the appropriate way to handle that. And so the council adopted the policy to indicate that the parking fund must be made whole. So I think adopting alternative one and requiring reimbursement is the most consistent with that adopted policy.
For when they ask for waiver for a total.
For asking for a waiver for the entire Campustown district.
Sometimes the event itself takes up
Right.
10 spaces, remember, just for the event, and then you've dealt with that on a case-by-case
Yes,
basis.
in those instances, the policy says that that request is dealt with on a case-by-case basis. But the policy that the council adopted several years ago is pretty clear that the parking fund should be made whole. And when you combine that with our normal procedure for requesting funds at budget time, and the fact that that did not occur in this instance, then I think the most consistent policy would be to adopt alternative one and require reimbursement.
But then in coming years, if they would request this at budget time, it could be budgeted into their.
Right. The council would have to make that choice at budget time, and we could deal with that in future years in accordance with the policy.
Okay. All right, for these matters, do we need public input?
Well, if there was someone.
There may be somebody here from
Okay.
Ames Main Street.
So is anyone here like to speak on this matter?
Yes.
Hi, good evening. Sarah Dvorsky. I'm here representing the Ames Chamber of Commerce. Yes, we are very excited for Small Business Saturday. As we've been meeting more and more with the Campustown Business District, we've learned there's a huge desire to participate in Small Business Saturday in a way that mimics how downtown Ames participates in Small Business Saturday. How that falls is really the gracious support we've received from the City Council in receiving free parking during our budget time period, which we have abided by the past few years. Obviously, this is new for us. It's new for our agreement is new with the Campustown Business District. So if not granted today, moving forward, we would plan to budget for that in the future. But we are very excited for this opportunity to represent those businesses in Campustown. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else like to speak on this matter? Okay, seeing none, close public comment. Entertain a motion.
I move alternative one.
Second.
Okay. And alternative one is to approve the request for Small Business Saturday in Campustown as requested, but require reimbursement from the Chamber of Commerce for lost parking meter revenue in the amount of $1,225. All those in favor? We need a roll call on this? Okay, roll call?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. And just to clarify, we've got a number of sub-items here on this matter. We need a motion approving the blanket temporary obstruction permit.
So moved.
Second.
Do I need,
No,
That
those
was
are all
wrapped up.
They're all
combined
wrapped
in alternative one.
okay,
Alternative one is approving the requests and require the reimbursement.
all right. Is there anything else that we need on this item? All right, thank you. Moving on to item 34, resolution approving the agreement with ISU Community and Regional Planning regarding community engagement for pop-up playful community engagement events and authorize $10,000 from the council's contingency account to pay for the initiative. And
Is anybody have any questions on it? I can explain it if you want me to, or is it pretty clear from the staff report? We're looking for, if you agree with the scope of service, this is an outgrowth of your goal. Remember your specific goal to develop and test and evaluate strategies to improve community engagement. And you specifically asked us to continue to work with the Iowa State University's community regional planning classes led by Dr. Alenka Poppin. And we're going to actually build upon last year's success with a new twist to bring mobile units out to some areas, actually neighborhoods that are represented by that have an underrepresented population, but also try to go to some of the entities that are trusted entities, perhaps faith-based organizations, and try to coordinate these festivals, these playful festivals, with their programming. And we're going to try to see which one is more successful. So they're going to be shorter periods of time. It's going to be mobile, and the students are going to help us over 2 semesters, as you'll see. And also, as they develop not only the techniques, we're going to make this relevant because some of the input we're trying to get through these testing is going to be dealing with sustainability projects and plan that you're working on. So we'll get some good input on that topic. And also, they'll help us identify some community influencers or leaders other than through formal neighborhood associations. We may identify people who we can rely on in the future when you want to engage the underrepresented population in getting you input in future policy decisions. So I think it's a step forward, an improvement, kind of exciting new hypothesis we're going to be tested. Students do a great job, and it's a 2-semester commitment. $10,000 if you want to do this. I've actually sent out the contract. You're actually approving the contract with Iowa State University and also authorizing it to expend $10,000 from the council's contingency account if you'd like us to move forward with this goal that you've established for this year.
okay, any questions for staff?
And Gloria's been working with us on this too, so she's very knowledgeable.
Okay, open this up for public comment. Any public input on this? Seeing none, council, what would you like to do with this?
I would move alternative 1, that we approve the attached agreement with Iowa State University for the pop-up playful community engagement events and authorize $10,000 from the city council's contingency account to pay for this initiative.
Second.
Okay, roll call?
Aye.
Julie, he wants to put on next.
Aye.
Thank you. Rollins.
Aye.
Barton.
Aye.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Item number 35 is a request for waiver of plating authority in the urban fringe at Hidden Creek Farm LLC in Story County.
We were just talking about.
Okay.
Good evening. So the property in question is just located at the northeast corner of 190th and Grant. So 190th is the current northernmost border of the city's corporate limits. Right right now. So the letter came from Fox Strand that's representing the property owner. And then the property owner is also represented by Kurt Friedrich, even though his name wasn't in the staff report or in Fox Strand's letter. So basically they would like to subdivide this piece into 2 parcels and create about a 16-acre parcel for future development of a church. This is located, since it's north of 190th, if you're familiar with the Ames Fringe Plan, it's designated agriculture and farm service, which is, the policies are to retain that rural nature. It's also in a Story County study area that's mentioned in that Fringe Plan area, and that just kind of says that each city and each county should maintain their review authority, which we have within 2 miles of our city boundaries. But that we should kind of keep status quo, no annexation, no major development, things like that. We just had Plan 2040 approved somewhat recently that has designated this area as Tier 3, an urban reserve, which is an area that is not prime for development today, but could be served with additional costs if it's not too cost prohibitive. And then they're also in the process of updating the urban fringe plan. And if you can remember from previous staff reports on that draft, they're proposing a couple new overlays in that plan, and one of them is urban reserve. And this area in the draft shows that urban reserve overlay, and that pretty much mimics Plan 2040 and what it says for this area. So they're asking for the city to waive all of our subdivision authority, so not to review it, not have any subdivision improvements like we typically see that relate to access or road improvements, things like that. Staff is kind of concerned with waiving all subdivision review authority because, like I said, in the city manager's comments, we point out specifically access, because subdivisions and a use that could be used pretty heavily depending on how many nights a week they have activities. We would want more than one access that may or may not be consistent. We may or may not have consistent ideas with the county, so we would want to discuss that with them. McFarland Avenue, we would want to make sure that that has the opportunity to continue north someday. Possible road right-of-way dedication, things like that. And then we always do those, almost always have those 3 covenants that relate to the properties. They won't protest future annexation requested and connecting to utilities when requested, and those fees. So the recommendation is to deny their request. And it's because we're not opposed to the subdivision or the use, but staff wants the opportunity to really review what subdivision requirements may or may not be beneficial to this site and what they're planning on doing. So there could be partial waivers of some of those subdivision requirements. So it's not a denial. The request isn't to deny the idea or the possibility of the church going there. It's just really so we can maintain our review authority, so we can keep it relevant and still be consistent with the Fringe Plan and Plan 2040. I did speak with the applicant before council tonight. I spoke with Mr. Friedrich. He is concerned about the denial delaying this too long, and I really don't think it will, because we can come back to you with a subdivision and those recommended partial waivers and those agreements, or we can come back with a list and then let you decide if you want to waive those before the subdivision comes before you. But I really don't think he'd ask for it to be for us to hold over on a vote until the next meeting because of the timing he's concerned about, his timeline.
He couldn't make it tonight.
Yeah, he couldn't make it tonight.
Questions for staff? Okay, public input? Seeing none? Council?
I would move alternative 1.
Second.
Okay, and alternative 1 is to deny the applicant's request to waive city subdivision requirements and plating authority at this time. So this is just a voice. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Julie. All right. Item number 36, discussion on procedure to rename the Ames Municipal Airport. Damien.
Good evening. So put together a memo after reaching out to our FAA staff that we work with out of the Kansas City area, asking them what would be involved. I attached a couple of the memos, emails that they sent us. As you can tell, the FAA is rather brief in their responses, but it is a fairly simple procedure once council decides what the name that they want to use would be. So the recommendation, really, the only recommendation they had was that we maintain the town's name within the airport, so the people know what city it is if they not familiar with the person that the airport is named after. The other thing too that we were concerned about is like, well, what is the FAA going to charge us? And really for the actual naming, it's all administrative. So they did not at this time identify any costs that we would have. So really it's just for us to change the physical signage at the airport. There's a sign on the front of the terminal and on the back of the terminal. They say sign, but it's really lettering. So we'd have to change that. And then the monument sign. So we asked a couple of the local signage companies who could do the work, and they estimated based upon their per letter number and what to do the monument sign around $7,400 to do that. If council wants to kind of buff that up a little bit to just give a little extra room, but it probably for sure be under 10,000. And then the other thing too would be is that the procedure itself is rather complicated. There's a lot of offices because obviously our name for the FAA in the FAA system is everywhere. So Ames Municipal Airport shows up in everything we do, in our grants, in the NIPIA system. So you see that from John Karish. He's going to have to do an airspace study, excuse me. So all the procedures that have our name in it, he has to do a fairly lengthy audit. And they quote us, essentially it would be around 9 months, but the FAA isn't like an average. It's always like a worst case scenario. Like, so they will never give you an optimistic estimate. So hopefully we could get it done faster than 9 months. But if there's any questions on that procedure, just let me know.
Council, any questions?
This is a response to a directive for the council to get information on the renaming. So that's what we provided you. So now we have in place renaming of city facilities. Remember, in addition to Parks and Recreation, you've made that policies in place, and now you have a better understanding of what's involved from the FAA approval standpoint for a renaming. So I think we provided everything that's been requested of the council to date.
Okay. Any public input on this? Seeing none, is there any motion from council?
Mayor Pro Tem, I would move that we place on a future agenda a council action form on the renaming of the Ames Municipal Airport for public discussion.
Second.
Well, do you a certain name or just the general renaming?
So I'm not sure whether there is a better option here, naming the airport after James Herman Banning.
Yeah.
But it could be James Herman Banning Ames Municipal Airport, or it could be Ames Municipal James Herman Banning Airport. There are models for both of those, and I would expect staff might give us a recommendation.
Oh, but it's related to that name though, right? Yes, right?
Does that need to be part of the motion?
Yes, you're specific. You're not just talking about generically renaming it. What you want to put on the agenda is the issue of renaming a certain name, right? The policy allows for the council to self-initiate a name. So I think you're probably pursuing that particular avenue. So I think do you actually want to put it on the agenda for the council to vote on that? The staff would have to come back and with some background information on that particular name to see if it qualifies under the policy, right? Do you want to do that, or are you just asking to talk about it generically, or what is the
No,
council?
I'm interested in modifying that motion so that it is a discussion of renaming the Ames Municipal Airport after James Herman Banning.
Okay. So the next time you see it, it would be to make that decision, I guess, right? Or delay that decision. But we would probably have to do some homework and explain to you why that person is of historical significance to justify that under the policy. That's what we'd have to do for you, which won't take much time, by the way. There's not a lot of effort to do that. There's a lot of information out there about this gentleman. Then you'll have to make the decision whether to do it or not. Now, I don't know, do you want us to get any input from anybody else? Airport users, or I don't know who else? That would take longer, but we could put it on the agenda I wouldn't want to do it on the 23rd because we have a packed agenda. It'd probably be after that.
So we have a motion, and you want to, is that acceptable to you for the second?
Yes.
All right. Any discussion? The one question I have with this, in my tenure on council, we have only named one thing. It was the skateboard park. And there was quite a bit of public input. There was another thing?
We named the Miracle Park.
Oh, Miracle Park. All right.
No, we've named park. Oh, since you've been on the council, we haven't named any other park.
Bear Park.
We've named Tira Park.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But those went through sort of the Parks and Rec naming.
they did.
And so my only question on this proposal is just because I had never heard of this gentleman, and I'm not sure very many people in the community know who this is. So as we think about naming a public facility, to what degree should the public have any kind of input on the name of this facility? So that's going to be a factor in my consideration of this, and I'm not opposed to naming the airport after Mr. Banning, but it seems odd to me that relatively no one in the community knows who this is. So that's the only thing I'm going to be voting in favor of the motion, but that's a point that I will want to consider at that future meeting. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed, nay. And it passed unanimously. Right. Moving on to item number 37. Thank you, Damien.
Yeah.
Item number 37, resolution authorizing the enhanced penalties for nuisance party violations beginning at 5:00 p.m. Friday, August 19th, 2022, and ending at 4 a.m. on Sunday, August 21st, 2022. Chief?
Good evening.
Good evening.
So on July 29th, City Council approved the ordinance to allow for enhanced penalties for nuisance parties when authorized by City Council resolution. So tonight, we're requesting to approve a resolution authorizing the use of this new ordinance for enhanced penalties. Again, starting at 5 p.m. on Friday, August 19th, ending at 4 a.m. on Sunday, August 21st. This coincides with Cyclone Welcome Weekend, which we've discussed at a number of council meetings. As you know, the current penalty for a nuisance party is $100 for a first offense and $200 for a second offense. We believe that that is not a sufficient deterrent for a lot of the behaviors that we see on this particular weekend, the Saturday before classes begin. And so we're asking to use the enhanced penalties for this weekend.
Okay. Council?
I just have a random question. Why 4 a.m.?
I thought the same thing.
Well, I was going to say because the parking is midnight. What?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why 4 a.m.?
So the parking was the calendar day of the 20th, and that coincides with the parking regulations that are alternate side parking. So you have to move every other day. For this one, traditionally for us, things begin to start to happen on Friday evening. And so we picked 5 p.m. Because a lot of that has to do with parking changeover as well. But 4 a.m., things are generally wrapping up. So you could certainly extend that time, but I don't think it's probably necessary. I think most things we're going to be wrapped up by 4 o'clock in the morning. At least we are hoping so. So it's my best guess.
Whatever you want.
I don't care. I was just curious.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me.
I had the same
Yeah.
question. Gloria, any questions on this one?
I had the same question everyone else did, but I also have the anecdotal evidence that the fire department came out and rescued partiers off a rooftop at 5 a.m. just down the street from me. So I thought 4 a.m. seemed perhaps even too early, but I'll go with whatever the chief recommends.
Chief, if you could just spend just a minute talking about, I thought this was so helpful the first time, the police department's approach to enforcement and the efforts to try to work with people. Just to give us a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think I would start with the process has already begun. So our officers are already starting that process of educating people in the area that we're talking about. So last weekend, this weekend, they'll be going out and stopping out of places that we know have had issues in the past years, and some of those are pretty consistent from year to year. The Good Neighbor program then will kick off just a few days really before Cyclone Welcome Weekend, where they'll have a lot of people going out. They're going door to door. They're sharing information. They're giving education. They'll be talking about the new towing ordinance. They'll also be discussing, if passed, the enhanced nuisance party. So that will happen. And then for us, one of the things that we do is we try and go out early. So our operation for Cyclone Welcome Weekend will start about 6:45 a.m. on that Saturday morning. And we're going to try and get ahead of it just like we've done in past years, where if we see a location that looks like they're probably going to have a party, we're going to stop out and do some education early before things get out of hand. And generally speaking, when we get a complaint or when we see things developing, we give them a chance to clean it up themselves. So our officers will stop out and basically tell them, you're headed towards a nuisance party, the way things are going. You need to clean this up and you need to do it pretty soon. And if you're unable to do that, then we'll have to step in and we'll do it for you. So our goal is always to get voluntary compliance of every law. Same with this case. We want people to have a response. If they're going to have a party, we want them to have a responsible party. We definitely want people to engage in more activities this year that don't involve alcohol, which is what the university has worked really hard on this year, is to provide a lot of events that are not centered around alcohol. So that's our hope, but we do try and do a lot of education before enforcement, and enforcement is always going to be that last step.
Okay. We really appreciate the community engagement and the efforts to educate rather than come down with a hammer. So very forward thinking.
Our hope is we don't have to use this.
Right.
We put that tool in the toolbox, but I still hope we don't have to use it at all, but we'll see what happens.
Okay. All right. So is there a proposal from council?
I'd move alternative one.
And alternative one is to authorize the enhanced penalties for nuisance party violations as we discussed. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Roll call vote.
Aye. Did that come through? It was an aye.
Yes, thank you. Barton?
Aye.
Rollins?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Motion passes. Chief, will there be an opportunity for you to report back to council after that weekend? Just let us know how this goes. It can be by memo. Would that be a possibility?
Absolutely. We could do that for both the towing and the nuisance party, so you kind of have an accounting of how that went. Absolutely.
That'd be very helpful. I think council will appreciate that.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation tonight. Item 38, resolution approving a state revolving fund loan agreement in the amount of $3,500,000 to be repaid with water utility revenue. And Dwayne.
Yes. It says water pollution control, and this is their project, and they take care of most of the steps. But as with any other loan, you've seen this several times because it comes before council both for the capital improvement plan and the hearing process. In this case, you also had to approve an application, which you did back in July, and this is the last step, and that's approval of the loan agreement. And then that'll go, these resolutions will go to the Iowa Finance Authority, we'll close on the loan, and we'll have the funding to start the demolition of the water plant. All the bids have been taken. It came in lower than this 3.5 million. The nature of these loans are that we just draw down what we need. It's a reimbursable loan, but when the process starts, we hadn't taken bids or anything. So we just stick to that 3.5 million number. But all we'd be borrowing is what we need.
It's a fantastic program. Questions or comments from council? Okay, public input on this? Seeing none, close public input. Is there a motion from council?
Move alternative 1. Second.
It's been moved and seconded, and this is to adopt a resolution approving state revolving fund agreement amount of $3,500,000 to be repaid with water utility revenue. Roll call vote.
Barton,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Fetcher,
Aye.
Motion passes. We now move on to hearings. We've been at this for 2 hours. Council, should we keep going? I think we're in the home stretch.
Keep going. Keep going.
Okay, I'm the same. All right. This hearing on proposed 2022-23 CDBG annual action plan program projects and budget. Vanessa.
Good evening. Before you have our annual action plan that we presented to you back in June and then had another meeting in July and finally put it out for public comment that ran from July 1st through August 1st. As you can see, we're looking at doing several programs that has already been given input. We did not receive any comments during the public comment period. And so we are just requesting that council approve us submitting the plan to HUD on or by August the 15th so that we can have our 22-23 allocation plan approved.
Questions for Vanessa? Open it up for hearing. Any public input? Seeing none, close public hearing. Accept a motion.
I move alternative 1.
And alternative 1 is approve the proposed draft 2022-23 annual action plan program budgets and proposed budget in connection with the city's CDBG home programs and direct staff to submit the plan for approval by HUD on or before August 16th, 2022. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Rollins,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Fetcher,
Aye.
Barton.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Item 40, hearing on rezoning with master plan 798 North 500th Avenue from agricultural to FSRL, floating suburban residential low density. This was continued from July 28th, from July 12th, 2022, and from July 26th, 2022. So, Justin.
Thank you very much. So the request is from Hunziker Development Group, and the request is to rezone the 28.58 acres that you see there with a master plan, right just to the immediate north and west of the existing, Sunset Ridge subdivision there. Quick background, we annexed this property into the city earlier this year. It comes in and automatically defaults to agricultural zoning. The developer's intent is to construct single-family homes here. So as a result, this does need to be rezoned. The rezoning being requested is the FSRL designation. And being that it is in a newly annexed area, as residential, it does require a master plan. The proposal is to construct between 55 and 65 new single-family detached homes there. The area that will accommodate the new homes is approximately 13.27 acres. The open space then further accounts for the remainder. And that does fall into the required density range for single-family detached homes. So with a master plan, the master plan has an agreement, and that agreement is attached. It's part of a contract rezoning in this particular case. So that outlines the required density as well as the number of homes that will be in the subdivision. And also in this particular case, there is a cost-sharing agreement for the installation of a sanitary trunk sewer line. And that line is planned in Ames Plan 2040 for future growth to the north and west. So this is a pretty vital piece of sewer infrastructure to get installed. And so that's occurring here with the development of this subdivision. We've attached that along with the details in the report. We also do note that there are American Rescue Plan funds that are budgeted on the city side to this project for the installation of that sanitary trunk sewer. And so that is a prioritized project since that is called for in Ames Plan 2040.
Just if I could on that, could you clarify the amount of federal dollars that are going into that infrastructure?
Yep. So the amount that the city has budgeted for this is $1,065,000. With that, I can answer any questions that that council has then at this time.
Good.
Further.
Council. All right. At this point, we'll open the hearing. Does anyone like to speak on this subject? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Justin, one question I had, are there any aspects of this property that are in environmentally sensitive areas?
The only aspect would probably be the extreme far east, where you see some open space there on the right side of the master plan. There's a small amount of floodplain that is on the eastern edge of that property. And the developer does not propose to develop that physically with homes, so it's planned to be in an open space area. Any development that would ever occur there, theoretically, if that were ever to happen, would have to meet floodplain standards, as well as any other environmental or stormwater standards.
Okay, thank you. And what is the recommendation from staff?
Staff is recommending alternative number 1, which is to approve the contract rezoning agreement.
Okay, is there a motion from council?
Move alternative 1.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call.
Aye.
Jump,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
All right, and then we also have to pass first passage of ordinance.
Move on first.
Second.
Roll call.
Jump,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Aaron.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, item number 41, hearing on 2021-22. Thank you, Justin. Hearing on 2021-2022 shared use path system expansion. Anyone from any questions for staff on this one?
Nope.
Okay, open the hearing. Seeing no one, close public hearing. Is there a motion on the resolution?
Do we divide it up? 1A, accept the report of bids for the 20.
No, it's just
You
all.
don't do that? You do it all together?
Yep.
Okay, move alternative 1, A, B, and C.
That's
Second.
perfect.
Okay.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Batcher,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Resolution passes. All right. Item number 42, hearing on cooling tower blowdown sanitary sewer modifications. This is going to be an interesting one.
It is. I'll pull it up. You have questions?
All right. Questions for staff?
Oh. Hold on.
All right. Open the public hearing. Any public input? I can't believe there's no public input on this. Close public hearing. Entertain a motion on the resolution approving final plans and specifications and awarding contract to Keller Excavating of Boone, Iowa in the amount of $354,894.20 inclusive of Iowa sales tax.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Barton,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Batcher.
Aye.
Resolution passes. We move on to ordinances. Number 43, second passage on zoning text amendment is amended to reduce medical parking rates for buildings fewer than 50,000 square feet and update medical office definitions.
Move on second.
Second.
Roll call.
Rollins,
Aye.
Corriere,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Batcher,
Aye.
Barton.
Aye. Ordinance passed. Item 44, third passage and adoption of ordinance number 4475, adopting the proposed amendment to the city's planning project review and notification process and approval process related to chapters 20 and 29 of the Ames Municipal Code.
Move on third.
Second.
Roll call.
Corriere,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Batcher,
Aye.
Barton,
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
All right, disposition of communications to council. We have
We've got
4 items.
at least 4, maybe 5.
So the first is a letter from Lee Grassley from MediaCom. This appears to be more informational in nature.
No actions required.
Okay, and so nothing to do on that. Item 2 is a letter from Chuck Winkleblack, Hunsaker and Associates. Notice of changes to small lot industrial development on North Dayton Avenue and request for approval.
Yeah, so you recall we had the small lot industrial development on Dayton Avenue. As the developer has already submitted, has approved a site plan for that particular area. As they moved ahead with it, they found that there's been a lot of interest and they'd like to tweak that, change that layout, excuse me. Actually, they want to go from 13 lots to 10 lots, we pointed out, and there was a maximum of allowed of 10-acre lots, and they have 2 that are going to be 10.6 and 10.4 acres. So they have asked you to consider redoing that or reapproving that proposal and that site plan. Now, that was through a solicitation of proposals. Remember that? There was only one proposal. We did pick that particular program that was being offered. I checked with the city attorney. He believes it's within your legal ability to modify that. What I'm suggesting is, I don't know if you need a letter back or we can just put on a future agenda. You will have to take formal action if you want to amend that approved plan. But I think they would like to move dirt as quickly as possible. And I think we could put it on a future agenda. I don't know if it's going to be on the 23rd again. Maybe it will because we got a lot of stuff. But I don't think you want to have a memo and then decide whether to put it on a future agenda. Now, if you don't want to modify that proposal at all, you wouldn't ask that we even take that forward on the city council agenda. But I think it's worthy for you to review that. There are minor changes that I think still in keeping with the intent of your vision for the subdivision. So I think you want to at least put on the agenda to decide. So I'm asking you to skip a memo is what I'm saying, if you want to consider it at all. If you don't want to consider any change at all, you wouldn't refer it to us.
Is there a motion?
I think it's worthy of you looking at, is what I'm saying.
I would move to put it on a future agenda.
Second.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Item 3 is an email from Kathy Wadoff, August 4th, 2022, regarding recreational fire code compliance.
I'm trying to get this letter here to make sure
You have it?
the location is what I think.
Wilmeth, 325 South Wilmeth Avenue.
Yeah, I think we have a history of dealing with this particular complaint. I don't think we've been able to, with the current codes, satisfy the neighbor. I think if there's any violations that are taking place, we have to observe that, and we've gone on at least 3 occasions. And I think the first time we did find something, and we warned the property owner they can't burn trash in a fire pit. And I think the neighbor, Ms. Wadoff, is complaining that's continuing to happen. We've gone out there and haven't found any evidence that we could cite the person. So you can certainly refer to us to again, but I don't think we're satisfying her until we either catch them doing it, or she could testify or take pictures that we can use as evidence. So I don't know how you want to handle that. I don't think she's happy with how successful we've been, to tell you the truth.
So, Mark, I have a quick question. Maybe you could help us on this one. We've had a number of concerns by property owners who are frustrated that there's noise or there's smells. We've had a concern with wind chimes now, that it may be the neighbor is in compliance with city codes and we're not able to help them. Are there ever times when the city advises people to seek legal counsel to see if there's a private cause of action aside from the enforcement of a city code?
Well, yeah, we certainly do that. We've done that on many occasions when people have called us about things and especially things that we just can't help with. We've advised them to seek private legal counsel to see if there's any cause of action that they can take.
So that seemed like a possibility here. So, I mean,
that's not a response people want, unfortunately. They want government to step in, and sometimes they're intimidated. They don't want to get into a fight with a neighbor, and I understand that too. This has to do with us catching them, having enough evidence to prove they're doing it. When we do go out there, even if we see smoke, if we can't show that they're burning trash in a fire pit, we just can't cite them. It's illegal to burn leaves or trash in there.
Right, but theoretically, you could have a fire pit every night at your,
Yeah.
So
it creates smoke.
Exactly, yeah.
So, I mean, you get requests all the time where police and fire have the authority to patrol an area more frequently. Do you need any direction from council on this?
No, we'll continue to do it, but we haven't been satisfied.
So maybe the thing to do is, I would like some kind of response, maybe to communicate our desire to maybe increase the patrolling of the area, but also perhaps to encourage them to seek legal counsel. Perhaps there's a private cause of action aside from what we can help with.
And maybe also a summary of any contacts that the fire
Oh, that's a good idea.
has already had around that property, so that we can see what the history is.
Right.
Yeah.
So would there be a motion to instruct staff to do that?
What's our motion?
The motion?
Yeah.
Do you need a motion for this?
I want to make sure I
To
do it.
refer to staff.
Ask
I mean,
staff
Mark
to
can
respond.
certainly talk about advise the citizen about their ability to pursue a civil action. I can certainly get a report on our interactions in the past, our efforts to enforce that or investigate it, and get that to you if that's what you want.
But I mean, I think it's valuable for the citizen to hear from us that we've heard their concerns, that we'll try to patrol the area a bit more, but I'm not sure what more we can do.
I would move that city staff respond to the letter writer with previous history and potential future avenues.
Right. Second.
So the moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Mark. Item 4 is a memo from Keith 2022 end of season hours at Furman Aquatic Center. And is this?
No, this is all information throughout the country. You know what's happening. We actually provide a better level of service in most cities. You'll notice in the metropolitan area of Des Moines, they will cease operation of their pools that they were able to open when high school starts. And we're trying to go all the way through the 1st of September. So we're trying to lay out how we can possibly do that, assuming we have enough people. It will maybe require us to cut back different basins from time to time. We're trying to give full service as much as possible for as long as we can. We've shifted now. Most of our lifeguards are high school students, and we anticipate when high school starts and people get involved in activities, and that's going to start before September 1st, we're going to have difficulty maintaining full operation, as we had throughout the summer too. So I think we've done a very good job compared to what other cities have done. Again, some didn't open pools or they rotated the operation of pools, but we just wanted to tell you, in case you got questions from the public, who I'm sure they'll ask about, I wanted to make sure you were armed with information to respond. That's all it's for.
I see a reference in here that the city council is required to take shifts for water slide attendants and admissions and concession staff. That caught me a little bit by surprise. It did.
That's why we got the Speedos ready. Tim, I got your Speedo.
Oof. Okay, I better keep moving this one along. All right, so that concludes the correspondence. All right, council comments. Anita, we'll start with you.
I didn't find that great couch, but I did get to volunteer at Rummage Rampage for a little bit and really enjoyed that experience. And it was on the second day. They had already raised half of what they raised the previous year.
Yes,
So I don't know what the final numbers are, but great experience, well organized, and enjoyed being out there. And Chief Huff has already left, but National Night Out, in spite of the heat, we heard there were around 2,000 people on site and gave out over 700 backpacks, and lines started at 4:30 for the backpacks. So it was a great event. And our RPAC group was out for their first event. So it was very well attended. So those are my couple comments. And a thank you to staff who are making all of that happen. So
Yep, great.
thanks.
Gloria.
Thank you for putting up with my lag on my responses. I don't have much except to say that I'm glad that the Rummage Rampage did well again this year. Unfortunately, I was not able to assist except long distance because of COVID, but I guess everybody did a great job without me. So congratulations to the team on another excellent event. That's all I've got.
Well, it's probably safe to say that the Rummage Rampage was not the same without you, Gloria, because you are a regular fixture of the Rummage Rampage. So thank you for all your work in years past on this. Amber.
Nothing
Now,
for me.
Tim, if they come back with twice as much, having made that without me there, I'm not going to feel as valued as I have in the past.
Oops.
But I know everybody's doing their best.
We will assume there's no correlation.
That's right.
Amber.
Nothing for me.
Rachel.
I just wanted to say I'm excited for next week's council workshop to kick off the bike and pedestrian master plan. Excited to get that moving and start the process there.
Yep, very good. I have nothing further tonight. Motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 We are adjourned.